In an explosive jaw-dropping memoir spare, Prince Harry rips apart the royal veil, exposing the vulnerability hidden behind the regal facade. From his wild teenage escapades with cocaine, alleged assault by Prince William, Camilla's betrayal, to shockingly admitting to taking lives in Afghanistan, it seems the spare was out for blood, and we are here to break it down for you. While it's not shocking that Prince Harry took drugs, given that both he and tabloids have discussed his relationship with substances over the years, his candor is still surprising. Of course, I had been taking cocaine at that time. At someone's house, during a hunting weekend, I was offered a line, and since then I had consumed some more, Harry recalls in spare. It wasn't very fun, and it didn't make me feel especially happy as seemed to happen to others, but it did make me feel different, and that was my main objective. To feel, to be different. I was a 17-year-old willing to try almost anything that would alter the pre-established order. At least, that's what I was trying to convince myself of. He also writes about his use of psychedelics, including ayahuasca, psilocybin, and mushrooms, to cope with the death of his mother, Princess Diana. Harry discussed his trip to Paris for the 2007 Rugby World Cup semi-final with BBC when he was 23 years old, during which he asked his driver to take him to the tunnel where his mother, Princess Diana, died in a car crash in 1997. He writes that he remembers cruising past the Ritz, where Mummy had her last meal before entering the Pont d'El Alma tunnel. The BBC added that Harry said they drove at the same speed as the car she was in, 65 miles per hour, not 120 miles per hour, which he says the press reported at the time. We zipped ahead, went over the lip at the tunnel's entrance, the bump that supposedly sent Mummy's Mercedes veering off course. But the lip was nothing. We barely felt it, Harry wrote. The unusual request did not bring Harry any closure, and he concludes that it was overall a very bad idea.
I wanted to see whether it was possible, driving at the speed that Henry Paul was driving, that you could lose control of a car and plow into a pillar, killing almost everybody in that car. I need to take this journey. I need to ride the same route.
The same tunnel, the same speed.
All of it.
Do you feel you have the answers that you need to have about what happened to your mom?
Truth be known, no. I don't think I do. And I don't think my brother does either. I don't think the world does. Do I need any more than I already know? No. I don't think it would change much.
Harry, who calls William his beloved brother and his arch-nemesis in the book, writes of a physical assault that took place in 2019. Prince Harry says his brother called Meghan difficult, rude, and abrasive, and then the confrontation escalated. He set down the water, called me another name, then came at me. It all happened so fast, Harry writes, so very fast. He grabbed me by the collar, ripping my necklace, and he knocked me to the floor. I landed on the dog's bowl, which cracked under my back, the pieces cutting into me. I lay there for a moment, dazed, then got to my feet and told him to get out. When he left, Harry says, he turned and called back, "You don't need to tell Meg about this." Harry replies, "You mean that you attacked me?" To which William reportedly said, "I didn't attack you, Harold." Apparently, both of Charles's sons were against him marrying Camilla. That's why, when the question came, Willie and I promised our father that we would welcome Camilla to the family. The only thing we asked for in return was that he didn't marry her. "You don't need to get married again," we asked him. King Charles and Camilla married in 2005. Yet, when the wedding happened, we pumped his hand, wished him well. No hard feelings. We recognized that he was finally going to be with the woman he loved, the woman he'd always loved. Fate might have intended for him in the first place. Whatever bitterness or sorrow we felt over the closing of another loop in Mummy's story, we understood that it was besides the point. Following a trip to Lesotho in 2010, the brothers returned to the UK and Harry found out his brother's engagement from the press. Soon after we returned to Britain, the palace announced that Willie was going to marry. November 2010. News to me. All that time together in Lesotho, he'd never mentioned it, he writes. The papers published florid stories about the moment I realized Willie and Kate were well matched, the moment I appreciated the depth of their love and thus decided to gift Willie the ring I'd inherited from Mummy, the legendary sapphire, a tender moment between brothers, a bonding moment for all. 3 of us, and absolute rubbish. None of it ever happened. I never gave Willie that ring because it wasn't mine to give. He already had it. He'd asked for it after Mummy died, and I'd been more than happy to let it go. Prince Harry served in the army for a decade, which included 2 tours of Afghanistan. He writes of warfare. Most soldiers can't tell you precisely how much death is on their ledger. In battle conditions, there's often a great deal of indiscriminate firing. But in the age of Apaches and laptops, everything I did in the course of 2 combat tours was recorded, time-stamped. I could always say precisely how many enemy combatants I'd killed. And I felt it vital never to shy away from that number. Among the many things I learned in the army, accountability was near the top of the list. So, my number, 25, he continues. It wasn't a number that gave me any satisfaction. But neither was it a number that made me feel ashamed. Naturally, I'd have preferred not to have that number on my military CV on my mind. But, by the same token, I'd have preferred to live in a world in which there was no Taliban, a world without war. Even for an occasional practitioner of magical thinking like me, however, some realities just can't be changed. Harry touches on his relationship with Queen Elizabeth, his grandmother who died aged 96 in 2022, reflecting on the moment he found out she had passed away on the BBC News website. As the late monarch's health declined, Harry writes that his father called him to share the news. The BBC further reported that Harry says he was told to come to Balmoral, the royal family's residence in Aberdeenshire, Scotland, but not to bring Meghan. Harry recalls that he was arriving by plane when he received the news on his phone, but not via a message from his family. When the plane started to descend, I saw that my phone lit up. It was a message from Meg. "Call me when you get this," he writes. He reportedly added, "I looked at the BBC website. My grandmother had died. My father was king."
I asked my brother, I said, "What are your plans? How are you and Kate getting up there?" And then a couple of hours later, all of the family members that live within the Windsor and Ascot area were jumping on a plane together, a plane with 12, 14, maybe 16 seats.
You were not invited on that plane.
I was not invited.
Yeah, and because Harry says he wasn't invited, he was forced to find his own last-minute accommodations, and as a result, he was too late. The Queen died before he was able to say goodbye.
When they started dating with Meghan, Harry writes, he made the mistake of Googling and watching some of her love scenes online. He continues, "I'd witnessed her and a castmate mauling each other in some sort of office or conference room. It would take electric shock therapy to get those images out of my head. I didn't need to see such things live." In another Suits-related anecdote, Harry reveals after his and Meghan's relationship became public, the palace tried to intervene in the scripts. He writes, "The show writers were frustrated because they were often advised by the palace communications team to change lines of dialogue, what her character would do, how she would act. Rumors have long swirled around James Hewitt, who had an affair with Princess Diana, being Prince Harry's father. According to Spare, Charles himself even made these jokes, which Harry calls sadistic. Pa liked telling stories, and this was one of the best in his repertoire. He'd always end with a burst of philosophizing, Harry writes, according to a leak obtained by page 6. Who knows if I'm really the Prince of Wales? Who knows if I'm even your real father? Harry continues. He'd laugh and laugh, though it was a remarkably unfunny joke, given the rumor circulating just then that my actual father was one of Mummy's former lovers, Major James Hewitt. One cause of this rumor was Major Hewitt's flaming ginger hair, but another cause was sadism. King Charles never spoke to him about the Hewitt rumors, Prince Harry writes, though the tabloids covered it constantly. Of the tabloids, he says, maybe it made them feel better about their lives that a young prince's life was laughable. Never mind that my mother didn't meet Major Hewitt until long after I was born. He recalls the first time he saw Meghan, which he shared in Netflix's Harry and Meghan. This time, however, he names the mutual friend Violet von Westenholz, who worked for Ralph Lauren at the time. I was sitting around not caught, scrolling through Instagram. In my feed, I saw a video, my friend Violet, and a young woman. They were playing with a new app that puts silly filters on your photos. Violet and the woman had dog ears, dog noses, long red dog tongues hanging out. Despite the canine cartoon overlay, I sat up straighter. This woman with Violet, my God. I watched the video several times, then forced myself to put down the phone. He continues, then picked it up again, watched the video again. I'd traveled the world, from top to bottom, literally. I'd hopscotched the continents. I'd met hundreds of thousands of people. I'd crossed paths with a ludicrously large cross-section of the planet's 7 billion residents. For 32 years, I'd watched a conveyor belt of faces pass by, and only a handful ever made me look twice. This woman stopped the conveyor belt. This woman smashed the conveyor belt to bits. I'd never seen anyone so beautiful. Prince Harry told Anderson Cooper on 60 Minutes that his stepmother Camilla was dangerous because of the need for her to rehabilitate her image. He continued, that made her dangerous because of the connections that she was forging within the British press. And there was open willingness on both sides to trade of information. And with a family built on hierarchy, and with her on the way to being queen consort, there was gonna be people or bodies left in the street because of that. Prince Harry writes in Spare, I didn't relish losing a second parent, and I had complex feelings about gaining a step-parent who I thought had recently sacrificed me on her personal PR altar. In Spare, he directly accuses Camilla of leaking stories. Harry writes, stories began to appear everywhere in all the papers about her private conversation with Willie. Stories that contained pinpoint, accurate details, none of which had come from Willie, of course. They could only have been leaked by the other person present. One of the lighter stories, Harry recalls in Spare, is the humiliating episode where he lost his virginity to an older woman, according to the Daily Mail, which also obtained a copy of the book. He writes that the woman in question liked macho horses and treated him like a young stallion. When the encounter ended, he reportedly writes, she spanked my ass and sent me away. The encounter took place in a field behind a busy pub, and Harry recalls that someone must have seen them because a bodyguard was instructed by Prince Charles to follow up on press office reports that Harry was taking drugs. As Harry recalls, in Spare, Charles and Camilla wanted Kate to change the spelling of her name, because there were already 2 royal ciphers with a C and a crown above Charles and Camilla. It would be too confusing to have another. Make it Catherine with a K, they suggested. I wondered now what came of that suggestion. Harry reportedly recounts how he learned about his mother's death from his father. Pa didn't hug me, Harry writes, according to U.S. Weekly. He wasn't great at showing emotions under normal circumstances. How could he be expected to show them in such a crisis? But his hand did fall once more on my knee, and he said, "It's going to be okay." That was quite a lot for him. Fatherly, hopeful, kind. And so very untrue, Harry reportedly added. In a later excerpt, reported by the New York Post, Harry was able to find catharsis when his ex-girlfriend Cressida Bonis asked him about his mother with the perfect combination of curiosity and compassion. Harry remembers telling his then-partner, who he met in 2012 via his cousin Princess Eugenie, and dated for around 2 years, that this was the first time he had cried about Diana since she was buried. While differences led to the breakdown of their relationship, Harry writes that he felt indebted to Bonis. In his memoir, Harry recounts moments he has felt helpless in his life, in the back of the car while Mummy and Willie and I were being chased by Paps, in the Apache above Afghanistan, unable to get clearance to do my duty, at Not Caught when my pregnant wife was planning to take her life.
Perhaps you could just give us an idea of what the last year has been like.
It's hard. When I first met my now husband, my friends were really happy because I was so happy, but my British friend said to me, "I'm sure he's great, but you shouldn't do it because the British tabloids will destroy your life." And I very naively, I'm American, we don't have that there. "What are you talking about? That doesn't make any sense. I'm not in tabloids." I didn't get it. So it's, it's been complicated.
And now. The now refers to when Meghan miscarried.